Welcome to the Executive Speaker Night Series. My name is Luca Poanga. I'm a professor at Regis University in the Anderson College of Business and Computing. And I would like to welcome you all and thank you for coming. You are the ones who make this very possible. I would also like to thank our supporting partners, IB SECO, and the American Solar Energy Society for spreading the word about this particular event. And we have been working together for a bit of time now. And today we are actually deeply honored to have Kjell, who is the Vice President from Panasonic, focused on Next Lab. Those are the guys who are developing the next thing that you are going to expect in the that you can expect in business. And so he has been working with Panasonic in terms of making cities smarter. And he is right now working with the city of Denver in a collaborative effort to make the city smarter and also make it more sustainable. So we are going to hear a little bit about what he's doing and how this initiative looks like. And so what I would like you to do now is to join me in welcoming our esteemed guest, Kjell.
Thank you, guys. That's heartwarming. Thank you all. And thank you, Luca. It's an honor to be here. And the format, if I may just repeat it, and please correct me, Luca, if I'm wrong here, but I will speak for some 30 minutes or so, and then invite for dialogue moving forward from there on. I don't want to be too lengthy on my presentation. So I will talk about this concept of smart city, and some of you may be more familiar with this, and some of you may not be. Smart city is a concept that came out of the tech industry, and really there was already some decades ago talk about Internet of Things, or IoT is the abbreviation. And smart city kind of built on top of that. The idea with IoT is that you would have sensors and computing power and connected computing power basically embedded in the fabric of everything around you in the cityscape. So you would have it in every kind of modality of transportation, in however you move about in the city, there would be sensors and computing and everything connected to the internet. So that was kind of the idea of Internet of Things. And taking that to the level of designing smarter cities, the tech industry saw a great use of solving difficult challenges in the growing cities. You also may know that most of the population on this planet lives in cities. Actually, it's some 53% of everybody lives in cities. And this number is growing quite rapidly. And the projection is that we, within not too many decades, will have more than 70% of all people on the planet living in cities. And this, of course, introduces a huge pressure on these dense environments when it comes to congestion, when it comes to pollution, and many other things as well. So kind of the idea behind smart city is to address and find solutions to many of these urban challenges. So I do want to stress the title on my talk here as smart cities being a means to an end. As you probably know, is that we, coming from the tech industry, get quite excited with what we call sometimes our shiny objects. We have this technology, we get very excited with it, and we talk very excitingly about it, and then somebody asks us, but why? And then we don't understand the question because we think it's so exciting in and by itself. So remember now, if you are responsible for a city as a mayor or some other high-level decision maker for transportation, for energy, for water issues, for social issues, whatever issues you have, and you have an executive level responsibility, you and your team are there for the citizens. So all of this has to be a means to an end. So using technology for that is really, really the bottom line of my talk today, if I may. Another key takeaway, I do the summary really up front, and then we could really stop here. But a smart city, sometimes you think, what project are you doing? And people talk about the project as if it was one thing. A city is not one project. If we want to create a smarter city, we are looking at hundreds of really well thought through and harmonized projects executed over decades and beyond. This is really, really important. So what are those projects and how are they interlaced, and how do we have the staying power, so to say, to keep on track and work on this diligent vision of how we look at our city moving forward for the next decade, for the next decade, and for the next decade. That is really what it is about. And this is one of the clashes with technology in city planning. Technology really is, they have a saying in the software industry that is build fast, fail fast. So really the bottom line of that is that you build something quickly, you put it on the market, and you see how it goes, and then you improve it from there. But think about the city. If you build a bridge, you don't build fast and fail fast. That's not how you build bridges. You want your bridge to be a good build from the get-go. And that is really kind of the clash between the long-term city planning over decades with the more impatient experimental technology industry. And marrying the two of them is really the perspective of smart city as I envision it. Having the city plan a long-term perspective and marry it with the possibilities of the future of the tech industry. On this slide, I would like to talk a little bit about the value chain. And this is really what we touched on already before. We have technology embedded in all aspects of our city space. When I was much, much younger than the picture you're looking at now, there was a place called Xerox PARC in Palo Alto in California. And they really have invented everything in and around the computer. Xerox, though, didn't capitalize on any of it. So they are famous for both inventing everything, and they are famous for not capitalizing on anything of it at all. One of the companies that did capitalize on it was Apple, and several other companies as well, very prosperous. But back in those days, we talked about ubiquitous computing. Ubiquitous computing was computing, again, embedded everywhere in all fabrics of life. And this really was what was developed then a decade or two later into the IoT idea, the Internet of Things idea. Internet of Things, you have computing power, low energy demand, and everything is connected into the internet. With all of these sensors and computing power at the edge of the city fabric, we start to aggregate and generate huge amount of data. The past 18 months, we have aggregated more data than humanity in all the precedented years. So this is one of these kind of exponential curves that we envision that in the next 18 months, we again will have aggregated everything and more than we have done before that, including the past 18 months. So this exponential curve as to how much data we are generating and how much data will be flowing in this internet between all these sensors and local computing powers out on the edges in the cityscape, aggregated up into the cloud, and there we can make use of them for different different kind of hopefully impactful topics for the better. We hope, of course. But the data in and by itself is not valuable. It's the insights and the calls to action that really starts to become the thing here. And when you talk about huge amounts of data, that's when artificial intelligence starts to play an important role. In particular, if you are into that field, artificial intelligence looks at huge amount of data, really not knowing what the data is, but it looks for anomalies. It looks, if you think about it as water, you can find these swirls of water in that huge water space. And those swirls are interesting because that is probably an anomaly, and that is something you can turn into an insight. So this is used in a lot of different ways to predict, for example, when you have peak demand on the energy grid, when you will have peaks in the transportation system, and many other use cases. So artificial intelligence here starts to play an ever important role in smart city. Now we start to look at what are the outcomes of this, and this is really, if you are a city planner, this is what you are looking for. And this is also, if you are a vendor, this is what you're looking for, because this is your value proposition, really. And some of the main areas when you talk about smart city, you would find in safety and security. And just to give a couple of examples in this, you can today, with artificial intelligence, you can detect patterns of movements. So you can actually, with cameras, without knowing who's on camera, respecting integrity, you can see threats as to how people are moving. You can see people falling down. You can see other kind of anomalies that would attract attention to some security control center and alerting staff working there, and they can get camera eyes on the site, and they can take action on that, dispatching security officers, as one example. Another example that we actually did work with the city on from the Panasonic side was trespassing on the tracks. Think about Denver, and you have the light rails, and people are starting to walk on the tracks, and that's a security issue. So how do you detect that, and how do you differentiate those trespassing incidents from people who have good reason to be there for maintenance and those kind of things? And you have bridges, for example, that are quite low, walking bridges going over the tracks. How do you determine if somebody's on the tracks or if they are on the bridge? Now, with cameras and artificial intelligence, we train the systems to identify who was supposed to be on the tracks and who was most likely somebody who was trespassing. So that is another area of security where artificial intelligence can play a role. Efficiency is one of the greatest hopes. Efficiency is really how you utilize the infrastructure better. If you think about the transportation system, is one very good example. If you think about the transportation system, many of us think about congestion. You sit in traffic going to work, you sit in traffic going home. But really, the infrastructure in and by itself oftentimes is not insufficient. It's just how we utilize it. So if you can change the patterns and having a small percentage of people changing their commute hours, use public transport, and other ways of changing behavioral patterns, it doesn't take a lot of change to actually mitigate the congestion that we experience in the rush hours going to work or going home from work. So this is a way of efficiency where we can defer infrastructure investments by utilizing infrastructure that we already have. Another very good example of that is the energy grid and the infrastructure related to the energy systems we have. we see a surge in electricity where we have electricity of buses, we have private cars, whole fleets are going electric. You probably have heard that Amazon committed to having 100,000 delivery vans being electric in the not too far out future. They even bought a company, Rivian, to make good on that promise. And you see this kind of wave of electrification. The thing is that the electrical grid is not really built to deal with such a huge shift in how we draw energy from the grid. When you start putting these vehicles with what you call fast chargers, drawing a really big load off the grid simply will not work. So how do you mitigate that? Building new energy infrastructure is very expensive, but if you can find other ways of mitigating that, then that's a big saving for the energy utilities. And this is exactly what is happening today in combinations of battery storage, energy battery storage, to balance the grid. So when you have high loads on the grids, you can use the battery, and you can even have batteries that you charge with, for example, solar or wind, when you have plenty of that, and you can dispatch it onto the grid to help support the grid when it's needed. So this is an efficiency kind of smart city technology where you defer infrastructure investments on a large scale at the same time as you drive emission-free transportation, meaning that the pollution, the air we breathe and so on will no longer be harmful for in particular sensitive people. Another area is sustainability. Sustainability is a little bit what I touched on with the energy side, but take a little bit of a different twist to it. If you think about many places in the United States, you have a lot of devastating weather events, not least on the East Coast with the hurricanes rolling in. This oftentimes means that you will have electrical outages. You have on the West Coast devastating wildfires, creating a lot of energy outages in the state. So sustainability is about mitigating those kind of situations. Sustainability and resiliency, where you can have, again, for example, battery storage. So when you have the grid being out, you can have a local battery energy system that can be dispatched, and you can have, for example, traffic lights in intersections working. You can have energy to the homes and to emergency facilities and so on and so forth. So this sustainability and resiliency is a really new important factor to the smart city landscape, where we try to use technology to improve on those. And then on top of that, of course, you have the new services. And the new services is, again, typically data-driven. One example that we have in Panasonic out of the Denver office is what we call a vehicle-to-grid software platform. That means that every car that you have on the roads in the future, they will be connected to the cloud. And in the cloud, you will take out all sensor information from the vehicle. You have windshield wipers when you brake, if your airbag is releasing, all those kind of things will be taken off the vehicle at a very high frequency and going up into the cloud. And in the cloud, you don't know anything about the individual vehicle or the driver. You just know this as patterns, as data patterns. So you can, for example, say that in this location, an airbag is released. Then you know that you have an accident there most likely, and you can take actions. But all these other data that you have from the vehicles, anonymous, so there's no integrity infringement, but you have this anonymous data coming out. If you make that available, you can have companies developing services on top of that data. like an Apple store, if you like. If you have an idea of what you can do with that vehicle data, you can create a solution and you can implement that on top of the data and create completely new services to the public, to the city, or to commercial entities. So these kind of new services is also coming out of this data aggregation that we have. And in this layer, if you like, that's really where the rubber meets the road. This is where it happens. This is where we create value. And in the end, of course, at the top of this value chain, we have the end game, and that is the value for citizens. That is why we have cities, isn't it? Because we have citizens living in them. And this tagline, a better life, a better world, that's what really brought me to Panasonic, and that's why I work for Panasonic, because for over 100 years, Panasonic has been working and been honoring the tagline, a better life, a better world. So this is the value chain. It starts with technology, sensors, and so on, and it goes up the value chain and all the way to a better life, a better world. Now, this city, Fujisawa in Japan, it's an amazing place. If we could travel, I would encourage you to go there, because it's really, really an interesting place to visit and experience in real life. I will give you a couple of high-level talking points on it. This site is a Panasonic site. It's an old factory site, so it was brownfield. And Panasonic decided to really enter into this smart city space and decided to build a city, really thoughtful, small city. It's really more a neighborhood, but really building it from the ground up and embedding technology in every aspect of this city and trying to create a better life, a better world. So looking at this space, you would have things like, you don't see technology very much. It's probably difficult for you to see on my screen, but if you look on the lower right side, it looks like a bench where you can sit. Now, this bench is if you can turn this into a grill. So when you have a tsunami rolling in, and you would have you would need to be a little bit more primitive in your cooking style, if you like, you can convert these into a barbecue and provide for the folks living in this neighborhood. You have the rooftops being gathering points, again for tsunami being a real threat in this area, where you are safe above the waterline and where you can sustain people for a long time. You probably know about the Toyota Leaf, an electrical vehicle. So this is a place where the Toyota Leaf is a community vehicle. So you can book it, of course, on your app and use it as a community vehicle. But also when you do have outages and emergencies, the vehicle in itself will provide energy back to the grid, to the community. So basically you run electricity out of the batteries in these community vehicles when needed. And so on and so on and so on. They have facial recognition. This is maybe something that wouldn't translate to the United States, but in Japan, it's everybody in the community are comfortable with facial recognition, meaning that if I would walk on that premises, there would be artificial intelligence tracking me and saying, not that I'm an intruder, they don't jump to conclusion like that, but they would say, this is a guy not being a community guy, so now we need to track what he's doing and what his whereabouts are, and they would keep track on what I'm doing and so on, because I'm not there. In the playgrounds then, families in their homes can send out the kids. They feel comfortable that the kids are safe in that environment, and they can at any time look on their iPhone and have camera eyes on that playground and see how their kids are doing and that everything is well out there on the playground. Again, some of these things would not translate to US conditions, but I think you start to see the picture of how this kind of community is completely embedded with technology. At the same time, when you walk there, you see a little bit on the pictures that it's really, really not a techie design. The architecture is very soft It's very Japanese in the details. You have actually breathe from the water in every space. You may not be able to see, but on the top right image, you have this kind of curved small streets between the houses, and they are in particular designed so the breeze can go through, and you would have a breeze from the ocean coming through all the streets to all the houses. So when you open your window, you would smell the ocean from your window, so to say. So it's really an interesting project where you embed technology at the same time you have this kind of human factor as to how this space was designed. Panasonic did a planning cycle for some decade or so. It was a long planning cycle, and everybody was at the table. Like the energy company, the water company. So they have all these stakeholders embedded into the planning session to create this kind of systemic level value for that whole community. And if you look on the left side, and this may be the most important takeaway from this, is that if you look at it, you really have CO2 levels going down by 70% compared to a normal development. You have 30% less water usage than a normal development. You have surplus 30% when it comes to energy production of solar, local solar that you have on every rooftop in this development. And really looking at it, the property value on the houses here are 20% above property value just across the street in the next neighborhood. So here you see how you drive these really key KPIs down, and at the same time, you drive up property value. So owning a house here at Fujisawa means that the value of your property will grow faster than the house across the street outside this neighborhood. Fast forward to Peña Station next in Denver. So this is really when Panasonic came to town, if you like. A discussion started some 6 years ago, and Panasonic was looking for a place to duplicate, if you like, the Fujisawa development in the United States. And there was, of course, looking around in different places to find a good location and so on. And long story short, Denver was the winner, not because Denver offered a lot of money to Panasonic. You know, some places do open the purse and they say, if you come and, you know, you get all these benefits, corporate benefits and so on, if you locate in our city. Denver didn't do so much of that, but rather what Denver said was that we are a city of collaboration. That's who we are. Across the aisle, government entities, private entities, and semi-private entities. What we do is we collaborate. And that was really kind of the key reason why Panasonic wanted to come out and establish a headquarters in Denver. And Peña Station Next was the selected site. It was then in the plans to have the light rail, the A line, going from downtown Denver all the way out to the airport. And the last stop before the airport was this greenfield development where we decided to be the anchor tenant. So this development here is really collaboration between, you see all these Denver, Colorado entities there, like RTD, of course, Xcel Energy, and Full and Wider, the main horizontal property owner, and so on and so forth. So Panasonic was part of this stakeholder engagement and planning out this development, and we really had a lot of interesting things for the United States as a first at Peña Station. And one of them, of course, was the net zero microgrid. Now we come back to resiliency, as we touched on a little bit before. So this net zero microgrid is basically a lot of solar and huge batteries. So now you can charge your batteries when you have plenty of solar energy, and you can use the batteries then when you have less, so in the nights, for example, or on a rainy day. So basically this development, as it is being built out, will be self-sustained and net zero. So it will not need to draw from the grid, it will be sustaining itself. It can even provide surplus on the grid and provide energy onto the grid. So this was a development we did. Of course, Kjell Energy was heavily involved in this one. And this was nothing that had been done before. Regulatory, red tapes doing these kind of projects can be very, very difficult. And basically when the stakeholders decided, let's do this, everybody came together and all red tape was resolved in 7 months, if I recall the timeline correctly. I'm not far off, that's for sure. But that was a record timeline to get all the red tape, work through all the details and so on, and having the permits for actually breaking ground and building this microgrid, which is operating since many years now. So that was a first. Also, we had this issue of public Wi-Fi and so on. We have this ultra high density community Wi-Fi that now is, so when you stop, if you would happen to stop, many stop and park, if they are traveling, you can park at the Penn station next and you can take the light rail to the airport. You would have Wi-Fi there as you park your car, or if you just get off the light rail and you want to use Wi-Fi, you have public Wi-Fi there. So this is ultra high density community Wi-Fi that was developed by Panasonic and deployed into this development. And also what we did was deploy a whole set of different kind of smart street lights. And street lights are not street lights anymore. They are real estate stacked with technology. That's what light is today. So of course you have the LED lights that you can control and do things with, but really it's the sensor and the technologies, the cameras, those kind of things that you stack on this pole. That is really what the smart thing about the street lights are. So we, together with the city of Denver, deployed some 50 or so different smart street lights, different brands and so on, and tried out a host of use cases on those. So that was kind of the first innovation wave, if you like. And then we have a second innovation wave that came out of that when we did have the Panasonic building up there and we started to actually work out of that development. One of the most exciting things that came out of it maybe was the first autonomous first last mile vehicle. So we had the governor, the then governor there out, and a host of other folks and cutting the ribbons and so on. But basically it was a self-driving 8-people vehicle that would take you from the hotels to the rail stop. So that was a really exciting kind of first that came out of this development. I do think I paused there, and if it's really, you have a couple of properties coming up there, and this coming year a lot of you have some houses coming up there and so on, so people are actually living out there now. But this will be a live, work, play kind of community in a couple of years, with restaurants, hotels, offices, apartments, walking, biking, tracks on the property for recreation and so on. So this is a really, really exciting thing that came out of a smart city, if you like. I will talk a little bit on stakeholder alignment. Now, if you really want to have a better life for your citizens, stakeholder alignment, I would say, is the key secret sauce. That is kind of where it starts and that is where it stops. if you think about any difficult and real challenge in the cityscape, it will touch on multiple agencies. It's not just the city parks, it's not just the water, it's not just the energy, it's not just the police, it's not just the economical development, and it's a lot of private, it's the downtown alliance, it's all of these private entities as well. So if you want to solve a real challenge, you need to get these agencies, private and public, together and have them align on this particular challenge and say, we want to solve this. You have to have this kind of shared sense of urgency, you often call it in change management. If there is no pain for all of these guys, you can make sure that there will be no solution. But if there is pain among these guys, you can make sure that they will push their respective teams to make progress and find a path. Very much like we did with the microgrid out at Peña Station next. So this shared sense of urgency, and remember now, let's take this example of, let's say that Denver wanted to become an emission-free zone for transportation, let's say, in a fairly short time frame. Is this possible? Of course it is. It's basically just a decision and say, let's make it happen. It's really not too difficult to have and you have in the world examples of this, so it has been done. Now, some organizations would be in favor of this and say, this is a great idea, this will drive economy, new types of job, air quality would be much better, and all these kind of things. You would have other organizations opposing, saying, this is a horrible idea, we're not ready for this is too fast, economical consequences, and you would have all those kind of arguments. And without judging pro or like if this is good or bad, it's basically just a matter of fact. If you have important stakeholders being opposing and you have other important stakeholders being in favor, you can make certain that you will not make progress. There will always be one more formal hurdle after the other that you have to cross. Not until you have this kind of shared sense of urgency. That's when you start to because now it's not a matter of can it be done, now it's a matter of do it. And the chief decision makers will push their teams to find a path forward. So I cannot enough underscore the importance on this stakeholder alignment component as to creating real value for the city in the smart city space. You may remember that I said it's not one project. It's hundreds of projects over decades. I will not talk too much on this topic, but we at Panasonic, when we came out here some 5 years ago, we designed this, if you like, jumpstart smart city process. It's really a creative process where you kind of identify 10, 15 really impactful smart city projects and drive them forward into a project stage. So this is a process that engages with all these key stakeholders. So you make sure that you have the stakeholders really kind of working together. I've been in rooms with executives, they see each other once a year or less, and they know each other by name, but they never ever try to problem solve together. And if you have ever experienced 5, 6 executives in a room together, there's a lot of kind of, role playing, and you lean back and you say, who's the big boss in the room, and all those kind of things. There's not a lot of collaboration. These guys are used to calling the shots and less so to collaborate, right? But when you've been in a couple of meetings with them addressing these, and these folks start to realize that we are here to solve problems. We are not here to kind of, have some kind of, this is not a game for a particular game for a particular executive. This is us collaboratively finding solutions to really difficult problems. Then you see a shift of dynamics with these kind of 5, 6, 7 executives, when they start to lean in, when they start to lower the guard, and when they start to problem solve together. That is really when the magic is happening, and that is when you can move the needle. So this process is something that we designed and we actually executed on in a couple of cities here in the US and also in Europe. So that is an exciting component of the Panasonic Smart City. And finally, I just want to calibrate a little bit because it has shifted over time. In Denver, Panasonic is really working in parts of the more holistic smart city landscape. We have these 5 focus areas, strategic focus areas within Panasonic. In Denver, we really work with smart mobility. That is kind of the primary focus. And as we said in the beginning, we try to define, we try to build and bring to market what's next in smart mobility. That is the key focus out of the Denver office. And we do touch on sustainable energy as well, as a lot of transportation becomes electrical. So there is a natural touch point on that. So when we talk about smart city in Denver, this is the area, smart mobility primarily. That is where we are working. And my summary slide finally, you know, it's not one project, hundreds of projects over decades, harmonized projects. It's not random projects. It's really taking everything that is good with city planning and marrying it with technology and bringing technology onto the wagon of long-term planning. Technology is not used to that, but that is where technology has to go. If we do that, we can really move the needle. The stakeholder alignment and shared sense of urgency. That is another really important takeaway from my presentation. And again, just a reminder, technology is a means to an end. And we are aiming for systemic city level value creation. This is systemic is a very important word here. And that goes back to the stakeholder alignment. Systemic change doesn't happen if you don't have stakeholder alignment. And the end game, again, we talk about citizens here, and we should never forget that. It's about citizens. If a city is for citizens, you will attract more citizens. Economy in the city is about citizens thriving. Without citizens thriving, no businesses and no prosperity. So it's all kind of starts with and ends with the citizens. So that was all for me, and I thank you very much for your patience and letting me indulge in this favorite subject of mine, Smart City.
Thank you very much. Now we'll open it up for questions.
I'll kick it off if nobody else wants to. This is Art. You started off your presentation by talking about artificial intelligence overall, which is great. And although it's such a misused term, obviously it's been around for 3, maybe even 4 decades now. But artificial intelligence, the good news is it went into data analytics, turned into data analytics, which you also mentioned. And then that turned into predictive forecasting, and everybody now is talking about the AR piece of that, which is the augmented reality. So relative to smart cities, strategically, where do you see that progression? Are we any closer to like predictive forecasting of city maintenance needing to be done on buildings and vehicles and that sort of thing? And God forbid we ought to get into augmented reality. Where do you think the world is on that continuum?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that. And I do agree 100% that artificial intelligence is oftentimes misused. It's much more, typically still, it's much more about just algorithms predicting things because you have a set of parameters and you do the calculations correct. But you also do have a lot of knocking on the door of more artificial intelligence. And again, artificial intelligence in this respect is detecting anomalies. So artificial intelligence is not kind of writing poetry for you, or it's not what we see, like it's not sci-fi. It's basically detecting anomalies where a human couldn't. We have huge amount of data, and all of a sudden this AI being trained on it can detect certain patterns, and now all of a sudden we have trained the AI to detect certain anomalies that we are looking for. One of them, I mentioned the platform we are building in Denver for connected vehicles. One of the things with you probably, potholes, we don't like potholes, do we, right? But how do you know where the potholes are? And basically when all the vehicles are connected, or a certain threshold of vehicles are connected, you can start to detect, because you will detect how the shocks are reacting to the surface. So if you have a pothole, you will quite quickly start to detect those kind of things. And now all of a sudden, if it's the Colorado Department of Transportation, or if it's the transportation agency in the city, they will start to have heat maps as to where the potholes are. And they can map those out, and now they can start to have more of planned and preventive maintenance, rather than kind of rolling cars and taking pictures and doing it the old way. So you have a host of those kind of things. Another interesting thing is what you call billable water. In Denver, as you know, in Colorado, water is a big thing, and basically what we are doing is wasting 30% of the water. It's called unbillable water, and you have a huge, there's a variety of things that makes this why 30% is why we had that big number. But just by starting to put sensors out in the pipes in strategic points, now you can start collecting data, and you will detect things like leaks, both slow leaks and emergency leaks, and other kinds of waste in the system. And really what experiences shows is that you can quite quickly drive down this kind of waste, where unbillable water, down to much lower numbers, down to the 20 to the 10%. Is what you have is typically this asymptotic curve where you go from 30% and then you go down. So it's easy to detect the big wins, and then it becomes more and more expensive to make continuous improvement. So that's another area where artificial intelligence already today is proven. So you certainly have those. Another area I would like, this was an exciting experiment we did with Denver. We put out cameras and detected, we trained the artificial intelligence to detect pedestrians and slow moving, like the scooters, the bicycles, and those kind of means of transportation. Because
you have another fucking text message.
Cities don't know anything really what's going on in the intersection as far as that. And just by collecting data as to patterns, what's going on, they start to get information, and they can start planning and mitigating challenging traffic intersections and so on and so forth. So that's another kind of pattern recognition that is more true artificial intelligence, if you like.
Hey, it's William here. I was just wondering if you're going to do any carbon atmosphere capturing, because I know in Australia they have big old silos in the ground, and they capture a ton of metrics of carbon from the atmosphere. And I noticed that by 2030, Denver wants to have zero emissions or something. But I'm just wondering if there's any of that going on.
Yeah. So from the Panasonic side, we are not. Panasonic is a very big company, so I'm not aware of everything going on. But from what I'm aware of, we don't do any carbon capturing. But I certainly do know there's a lot of effort going on in the world. On that note, seaweed is the secret sauce. So I will not go down that rabbit hole on this particular talk, but if you are sometimes going into TED Talks, there's a wonderful talk on seaweed and carbon capturing that to me is super exciting and actually seemingly quite feasible. So yes, those things will be needed, and you call it drawback. It will not be enough to mitigate climate change by just reducing emissions. We kind of have passed that threshold already. So without drawback, we will have quite severe effects of climate change moving forward the next couple of decades.
And as for the battery technology, is this like something that's inside of the house or in the basement, and then it's hooked up to an electrical grid, and it could power the RTD or something?
So you have a host of different solutions. The one we have at the Peña station next, our office site, it's actually above ground cabinets, huge cabinets, and there you have stacks of batteries. So that's kind of the battery storage. And for buildings and those kind of facilities, that's basically how you do it. You have these storages. You can have them at charging stations. You can have solar, battery, and a charging station. And so big batteries, data centers, huge consumers of electricity, and using battery storage to balance that out with solar is something that also is coming really fast. So above ground storage on batteries is really the most common. Then you have the household kind of smaller, like the Tesla, they have the wall mount, and you have a host of companies doing these kind of residential wall mount batteries that you can basically buy and mount yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question. I really enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for your time this evening. My name's Tyler. If you could sort of sum up, what is the market opportunity for Panasonic here in Denver? And so that's sort of the first part of the question. Like, what's the value prop? What's the market opportunity? And who is providing the revenue stream sort of from these services that Panasonic is providing?
Got you. Thank you. So if we look at it, to be 100% honest with you, when Panasonic came out here 5 years ago, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And this is what the company like Panasonic can do. We knew smart city was a big thing. We had Fujisawa as an example, and we said, let's go build a Fujisawa in Denver and let's see what happens, right? So it's not without the plan, but it's not like a plan in the details, right?
Sure, maybe a little bit more in the R&D stage.
It was in the R&D stage.
Explorative, almost like venture stage.
It was a venture stage, but really, if you look at what we yielded, and that was certainly not planned, is this first on the large scale vehicle to grid platform. That was a collaboration between Colorado Department of Transportation and Panasonic. We connected the dots because in Japan, in Tokyo, we did have some kind of traffic management system, very sophisticated and very advanced. So we did have a lot of experience, and we connected the dots because we were in these discussions that Colorado Department of Transportation wanted to do something on scale here in Colorado and being a first mover in the United States. So long story short, we were awarded a contract with them, and then we extended that contract and so on. So this platform was built out of the relationship we had here in Colorado with the stakeholders, in particular with Colorado Department of Transportation. And now we are still in the developing stages of that platform. So we have Colorado was the first, we have Utah, and we have some other states we are working with, and we hope to be awarded a couple of other states before the end of this year. So this will be for Panasonic a huge, completely new revenue stream that basically will change how Department of Transportations across the United States will, for them, it's efficiency. So it's operations and maintenance that they will drive down, and it's less casualties on the roads. Those are the two main use cases for them. And this platform for Panasonic is completely new, came out of the stakeholder alignment engagement in Colorado. So that's one example. And this is really my job, is to come up with the next big idea and the next big idea, right? So really in Panasonic in Denver, we try to come up with the next big idea in this, in particular, smart mobility space, and really bring to market. So it's an exciting internal innovation engine, if you like, but that was not 100% how we built and came out to Denver, and we said, let's do this and let's see what happens. And this is what happened.
Awesome. And if I could steal one more quick follow-up question. Sorry, everyone.
No problem. Go ahead.
Similar to how Panasonic has partnered with Tesla in this case. They were the industry expert to producing their batteries. Now, Tesla's sort of transitioning. In Denver specifically, does Panasonic sort of have existing stakeholders or industry experts around in the smart mobility space that you said one of the areas of concentration here in the city?
Yes, we do. So you mean if we have these relationships with CDOT and the city of Denver?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Specifically around smart mobility, like is there a neural network company, sort of specialist company here that's providing some expertise in that particular area? Like, what partners do you have here, if any, in town?
So in particular for this Cirrus platform, the V2X platform, that is the one that is most mature. And now we have customers and so on. So that is the platform. On top of that, that is the app store, if you like. So this is where you can have all of these companies kind of plugging in. So that is really the next wave, if you like. So we have all of these companies on the radar, but we need to get just one more step further ahead on commercialization of the platform before we kind of open that next development avenue up completely for new. And there you have the whole range of huge corporations and the small startups all kind of innovating on top of that platform. So that is what we envision happening next.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Well, if there are no questions, I will ask one myself. If you're looking at these cities, how large should they be? I'm looking at the economies of scale. For instance, you talked about solar batteries storing all this energy. But if the city is very small, that means that the cost of providing that electricity is going to be higher.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
So the energy market is we could spend the whole evening talking about the energy market.
Absolutely.
But number one is that the energy market is in disruption. So if you think about energy utilities, they are, if you like, the old record label. They know that their business is eroding. They know already today you have community opting out from the utility and basically providing their own energy. So think about this. You have whole small cities opting out of the grid and say, no, we don't want to work with you guys. They completely opt out of it. You have commercial companies. One of the companies we've been working with is a company called MGM. They are one of the largest property owners in the world, and they have a really aggressive agenda when it comes to water and energy and other other sustainability topics. They basically opted out of their local energy utility in Las Vegas and took the penalties because it's mandatory to be part of that grid. You cannot opt out of it. They did anyway and took the legal penalties of that because they said, we can't move that slow. You are a regulated utility, you move too slow. We have to move faster, right? So you have a huge disruption in the energy space, and you have many, many kinds of solutions. Everything from the residential, where you as a resident take control and you mount something on the wall and something on the roof, and you become semi-self-sustained, if you like. You have the neighborhood kind of solutions where you have a microgrid for the neighborhood that could be run by the utility, or it could be community owned, or it could be third party owned and providing services to the residents. More and more commercial facilities today, big commercial facilities today, are net zero using microgrids already today. So that's like basically for if you are a Google or if you are one of these kind of brands, you basically go net zero. And when you plan your facilities, you plan them net zero. So this is something that is moving really, really quick and on all scales. So the small community, they have their choices, and the large scale, utility scale kind of operations, they have their ways of solving the same kind of problems. They want to do that. The utility want to own the assets and rate base it. That's basically their business model, investing long-term in expensive assets and rate basing them. So they love to own batteries, they love to own, you know, so that is really where they try to move and defend their market position, if you like, to find new revenue streams through this new change in technology. So a long answer on that very interesting topic. So thank you for asking
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Person. We are so happy that you are here to share this knowledge with us, and I'm sure the audience did enjoy it. So I would like to thank you very much for coming and sharing this evening with us. And for the audience, I would like to thank you as well for being here. Without you, it would have been just Q and I, and I'm sure that would not have been very fascinating at all. So thank you very much. And we'll end it here. I promised he'll be out of here by 7 o'clock, and I've already eaten 100 some minutes into his time. So join me in thanking him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me indulge. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.